What's up, your Austin man? So chuckified with another edition. Could be the first edition, depends on how I release them, of Work No Filter. This is my attempt at bringing you people that not only have excelled in the boardrooms and all of the corporate shenanigans, and people that are bringing something different to the table from a human perspective and how that can fit in a professional light or in your just regular non-work life. So I've got with me today a good friend of mine and past boss, Michael Seiler. We work together at Humana, and I really do believe that you helped me level up, regardless if I was kicking and screaming and hated your methods and all of those things. But it definitely has made me better. And so I thought that was a good reason to have you on the show. So welcome. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thanks, Chuck. It's funny. I think as a coach, as a leader, if you're the people you're working with, coaching or developing, don't have a little bit of animosity, you're probably not pushing them hard enough. Like they need to feel like they're being pushed sometimes. So as Chuck mentioned, we worked together at Humana. I was at Humana for 25 years, and through that, really, where I found my most passionate and exciting part of the job was really coaching and developing individuals and teams to build sustainable performance. And years ago, actually, as I look at the through line, I've been coaching most of my life. I mean, even when I was younger, there's been this coaching slash teaching thread throughout my life. And about 7 or 8 years ago, after helping a ton of people train for running events, biking events, and doing it all out of the goodness of my heart, I was like, wait a minute, this would be a nice thing to be doing and making money and helping as many people as I could. So I started a coaching company called Stage 22 Performance. And then about we're coming up on 3 years, my personal coach, because coaches need coaches, asked me if I'd ever thought about partnering with another coach. And I said, sure, but there's only one person I would partner with, and that was her, because our philosophies are very similar. Our approach to coaching and developing people are very similar. And we started Metta Performance, which is really focused on metta as a Pali word, comes from the Buddhist tradition of loving kindness. And we really think that starts with yourself and treating yourself with care and taking care of yourself. And that's where we saw a real gap in coaching and developing, is that people tended to focus on just the context. So if we're coaching you in a career context, that's all I'm really going to focus on. But we all know you've got all these other roles and hats that you wear, from um, partner to parent to community member, that takes time out of your day, has demands on you. And how do we help you balance all of those things and not just your career? So the athletes I work with are always surprised when I'm asking them, well, what's going on at work? Do you have travel coming up? Do you have any big meetings you're preparing for? Any big projects you're working on? How's family? Are you connecting with your family? Because all of these things are what we have to balance. I can't just focus on, here's your training plan and do this training plan and push everything else aside. That's just not the key to building sustainable performance.
So you said something that was interesting to me because we do think about, or at least I've always thought about performance as something that I have to accomplish or something, there's an end goal, right?
Hmm.
And you said something about, you didn't say loving yourself, but really taking care of yourself. And that's something that I struggle with mightily because I feel sometimes that a pretender or fake or something of that nature. What part of therapy would coach provide or touch on? Because to me there's an element of humanness in there that it's a delicate balance. How do you work with that?
Yeah, and I'm always very clear that coaching is can be therapeutic, but it is not therapy. And that's one of the things. As a coach, there's a point at which I get outside of my practice, and that's when I need to say, hey, this is something that you need to honestly, and that could be something like Nutrition is another example. I know a lot of stuff because I've researched and I've experimented and I've learned things, but I am not a nutritionist. So if you need dietary help, I'm going to pass you off to a professional. But getting back to your question, I think the pressures of life, you do get into this feeling like I got to keep doing more, I got to keep doing more, and that kind of grinding it out mentality. And honestly, humans just are not wired for that. Our society, especially Western society, has kind of forced us into that. If you look at like circadian rhythms, so our sleep patterns, about every 90 minutes we go through a cycle. Well, there's a similar cycle during the day when we're awake. And it's about every 90 to 120 minutes. And but what we do is we sit in a 3-hour meeting, then we have a 5-minute break, and then we, you know, jump right into the next meeting, and there's no breaks. There's no mental pauses. And so that's why at the end of the meeting, we're feeling so fatigued and drained. That's because we haven't built in those breaks. And to me, that's just like a small little thing you can do for yourself to take care of yourself, just to create that space during your day, whether it's just turning and looking out the window and thinking thoughts or thinking nothing, but just taking that little break to recharge your batteries to be able to then enter the next cycle of focused work. And that could be, whatever dimension you need to hit, whether it's a mental thing, a physical thing. Maybe I just need to go walk up and down the block for 10 minutes. That's my break, but it gets the blood flowing, starts to get those creative juices flowing back. It's restorative. And then you come back and you feel fresh again. But it's like looking across those domains and how can I take care of myself to reduce that pressure. It's not going to go away 100%, but just to, a little release valve so that I can then get back to work and stay focused.
I think one of the things, and we're going to get into the actual interview, kind of threw some things on you there, but I wanted to unpack them a little bit because I think one of the things, that whole getting up every 90 minutes or 60 minutes or whatever, that's something that we've heard over and over and over, but that in itself is something that you have to make an effort at.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, sometimes I'm just heads down. I'm just like, it's not worth getting up and doing that, even though it's going to have a positive effect on me. And I think that touches on how much do I care about myself as a human
Right.
being, and doing the things that my body deserves, my mind deserves, things of that nature. So, because it's always the end result. I'm always on the end result. I'm not thinking about everything that I'm going through to get to that result. And I know, given your cycling and how heavy, I mean, you're like a 2-time Ironman. You qualify for the Boston Marathon twice. I mean, you clearly know about end goals, but that's not what performance is. It's not just the end goal. Tell us, what is performance?
So my view on performance is that, and I like the word you use around goals, because doing something like an Ironman, qualifying for Boston, is a goal, and goals are important. But I think you have to go a level higher, and the reason for that is goals. So much about goals are outside of your control. I mean, the marathon I ran to get my qualifying time for Boston, I mean, anything could have happened. It could have rained that morning. It could have been super windy. I could have twisted my ankle on a pothole. I mean, there's just so much outside of your control. But that's not to say don't set a goal. It's just realize those things are outside of your control. So that's why I think it's more important to go a level up. And there's a great book called Inner Excellence by Jim Murphy, and he sets the next level up of what's your dream? Like, what do you dream about? And so when I think of the things like qualifying for Boston or completing an Ironman, I spend a lot of time like, what's that going to feel like for me? So less about getting the time or finishing the Boston Marathon, getting to the start line, but what's that going to feel like for me? And so how do I drive towards that feeling? Because you'll notice I probably, unless I slip up, I won't use the word peak performance. Like a lot of people talk about peak performance, but that implies that there's this point you climb to the top of this mountain and you just stay there. And that's not the way life goes. You're going to have periods where you're going to get to the top, it's fleeting, and then you know, have a little valley, and then you get to the next peak. And what we're trying to build is really this sustainable performance, this sustainable high performance. And that's of, you know, it's a function of mindsets, a function of habits and routines, doing the things every day, consistency. But that's why I think you need to start with, you know, what are your values? What do you dream about every day? What's really important to you? Because I can tell you, so I recently moved to North Carolina, and I used to think like getting that Boston finishers medal was the thing. And I was unpacking and they're sitting in a box wrapped up. It's like, that's not the thing. The thing was the feeling, the emotions of putting in that hard work to be able to go do that event, running it, enjoying the moment, and that feeling. That's what I look back on, not the medal, not my time, none of that. It was the feeling. And so I think you really have to start. Jim Jim Murphy calls it the what do you dream about, but it's that higher level. Like, what's really important? What are you doing this for?
So, okay. So, what separates people like yourself, and I'll put you as the example because I've seen you consistently perform. What what is it that separates those who, I guess, get it and those who don't?
There's a couple things, and I've seen it across, you know, people that I've worked with in a work context, but also in a athletic context. I think that probably number one is just being consistent and doing the thing every day, because you know you'll see people, and I've trained athletes who come and say, oh, I've never run a marathon, I want to run a marathon. And so I get them to run a marathon, and they just, after that, they stop running. And you know, they kind of felt like, okay, I checked that box, I'm moving on to this other thing. But I think the key is, just for me, it's always been about, so what, going back to the dream, what I dream about living as long as I possibly can, and being healthy as long as I can. Thinking this, not so much my lifespan, but my health span, like how long can I go and be healthy? So the key to that is consistently working out, consistently eating right, consistently getting enough sleep, consistently hydrating. So doing those things, all these basic things we all know about, but doing it consistently. So I think there's a consistency standpoint. I think people who have a growth mindset, so they feel when they experience a challenge, they approach it from a standpoint of saying, okay, this challenge was brought to me to teach me something, or it's an opportunity, but I'm going to embrace it because I know it's here to serve me. And that's hard to do when, you know, a parent passes away, or you you know, get passed over for a promotion at work. It's easy to really wallow in that, in the muck of that feeling and the emotions. But if you can kind of rise above it and say, okay, what's life trying to, what's the lesson here? What's it trying to teach me? And that's true. Then if you look in the athletic context, that's why we do interval training, is we learn how to push our body. We learn that that workout can be really hard and can really suck, but we survived. And so the next time I have a hard workout, I'm now got all these little consistent data points that says I can do hard things. I can overcome this challenge. I overcame all of these other challenges. And so I really think it's consistency, doing the things day in and day out that you need to do that are important. It's having that growth mindset, and then it's making sure that you're doing the right work, which is driven by your values, your dreams, what you want to get done.
All right. So, one of the things you said is consistency, but people that don't have the mindset or the resilience, I'm using myself for this whole thing, okay? Because
Okay.
I'm the perfect example, right?
Yep.
Consistency for me every day, getting up, yeah, I brush my teeth, yeah, use the restroom, eat some breakfast, maybe. But for me, consistency has just been one of those things where my mindset is not thinking about myself in the morning from a what does my body need, what does my mind need. It is immediately into, oh my God, this bad thing's going to happen. Oh, I got to plan for this. I got to whatever. What is it? Is there an element to it that is you have to get in the right headspace every morning? Like, is there anything that separates people that, are able to consistently perform, or is it just practice?
I think it's I think anybody can do it. I think the key is establishing those routines and habits. I mean, you mentioned brushing your teeth every morning. You probably don't even really think about it. You just get up, next thing you know, you're brushing your teeth. And that's really kind of what you want. So I wake up every morning and I know I'm going to do something, some sort of physical activity every day. It could be, I mean, like after this interview, I'm gonna go out and ride my bike. But it could be just going for a walk, but something physical to move my body. Because going back to my values, being healthy is one of my top 5 values. And so I'm going to do those things to make sure that I stay healthy. So it's whether it's mobility work or getting in the gym or running or biking. So I know I'm going to do that every day. So you have to really figure out what's important to you and then build the habits and routines around that. And if you're starting something, say, oh, I want to start being more physically active. Don't go and say, I'm going to sign up for a marathon. Start with the smallest step you can take today, which may just be, I'm going to walk up and down the block. And then just make that a habit of saying, okay, every morning I'm going to get up because I want to get more health. I want to get healthy. I'm going to commit to doing this thing and just start small, walking up and down the block, then walking around the block, then just continuing to add. Now, maybe you start jogging a little bit, jogging a minute off, but it's starting to build those habits and routines that become like brushing your teeth or whatever your morning ritual is. It becomes just something you almost go autopilot on. And that's how you start to build that consistency. You build those habits and routines that just become part of your day and you don't even think about them.
Why do you want to perform? Like, what when you get up in the morning, why is the first thing on your mind? I'm performing. This is my thing. Like, is it a drive? Is it the thing that you're like, well, most normal people, you would want to get up and take care of yourself and try to put your best foot forward? What is it? What's the thing?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, for me personally, and you know this, having worked with me, competitions, it's one of my top 5 strengths. It can also be an Achilles heel at times. There's a joke in my family that says, "Dad can play any game, just don't ever keep score," because he's going to go for the win. But I think if I step outside of myself, I think we all want to deep down be the best person we can be every day. Does that mean that I'm going to be performing at a Michael Jordan level every day? No. That's a ridiculous expectation. But I do wake up every morning and try to say, I want to be the best I can be today, whether that's working around the house or whether that's out on my bike. But how can I be the best person I can be today? And so even if I'm just not feeling it and I'm at 50%, whether it's, mentally, emotionally, physically, but can I do 100% of that 50% so that I'm at least maxing out where I am today? And I think at its core, that's what everybody wants to be. They want to wake up and they want to feel like I'm going to be the best I can today. And we just need to be comfortable knowing that we're not going to always be at 100% every day. So, can we get 100% of whatever we're at that day? If I wake up and I'm not feeling great, okay, well, do as much as you can with what you got today. Performance doesn't have to be winning a gold medal. I think that's where we get stuck a lot as humans is, we've only performed well if we've gotten, a check mark on our grade, or we got a medal, or we got some pat on the back. But just doing the best you can that day in that moment, that's performance.
That's a good answer. All right, so if somebody's listening today and they want to level up, and they might be in my position, which is rolling out of bed going, "Oh my God, I don't want to do this." Right? I don't want to. I don't want to put in the effort. And mine is from, my job search since November.
Yep.
I'm just really burnt out. But what if somebody wants to start leveling up, what would they do? Where would they start? Like, how would they begin that?
I think the first step is taking the time and really defining their dreams, their aspirations, but also with their core values. And I keep harping on this because it's when you've got a good framework and you know what's important to you, you have this amazing now decision framework that you can make decisions against. And the example I often use is, let's say you spend the time to find your values, and your top ones are family, health. Let me see, what we'll stick with those two. And so you start, either you're offered a promotion at work, or you're interviewing for jobs, and you get this offer that says, oh, here's this job, it sounds great, but guess what? You're going to be traveling 50% of the time. It would be easy to get lured into, like, oh, it's a vice president role or a CEO role, or it's a lot of money, or it's working for a cool company. You could easily, without knowing, you're having defined your core values and identified your dreams and aspirations, you could easily take that job. But how is that 50% travel and being on the road, how is that going to impact your family? How's that going to impact your health? And is that sustainable to be basically working against what you say is important to you? I would argue it's not. It's not sustainable. And so that's why I think starting with, what do you dream about? And you can use whatever the context is. It could be, I'd like to be working in an industry where I feel like I'm giving back, or I'm contributing to improving the health of Americans. Well, now you've got a dream. You're less hung up on whether it's the job title's right, the company's right. You can now focus on that, and it just starts to give you a way to make better decisions about the choices you're going to make in life. And the same is true in an athletic context. Is you know I spend a lot of time with my clients talking about what's important to them, what are their values. You've chosen this event. Why is that important? And if they say, "Oh, I think if I qualify for the Boston Marathon, it's going to prove I'm a runner," and I'm like, "Well, that's not going to prove you're a runner. It proves you can run." So we really try to pull apart and figure out what's really important, because then that's going to make sure that you're going after the right things, doing the right work, and focusing that. And then it also allows you to shut out things that are going to derail you from that. And I think, you know, self-promoting, I mean, that's really the role of a coach, is to help people start to pull apart and identify. I mean, I've got a bunch of tools and things that I use with my clients to help them identify what are your dreams? Why is this important to you? What are your values? How do those values manifest themselves in your life? How often do you use them as a decision-making tool? Um, because those are the things that are gonna, again, getting back to how do you build this consistency, is if you're constantly making the decisions based on what's important to you, you're gonna say no a lot more times than you're gonna say yes. And then the things you're saying yes to are the things that really are important to you, and I think are going to set you up for success in the long run and building that sustainable performance. But it really starts with defining what's important to you, defining your why, identifying those values, and then using them to make decisions.
So I guess after this call, I'm going to start my vision board and put my
Yeah,
dream up there. Yeah,
put your dream up
and
there.
I'm going to become a professional angler, fisherman of bass. So that's
Okay.
my dream. I don't know that I'll be able to support my family on it, but I'll enjoy it.
Yeah. I don't.
So,
So why would you want to be a professional angler?
oh man, could you imagine? Like, that's your job, fishing every day?
Yeah. But what is it about fishing that you like?
The quiet, the meditation, being on a kayak by myself and taking in the world, without
So is
any
it really about
interruption.
being a professional angler, or is it really about creating more space and clarity in your life?
Probably a little of both. Probably more on the clarity and the
Okay.
a little bit on the pipe dream of competing on a boat and all that good stuff.
But do you see how that's different if your dream or your vision becomes, how do I create more clarity in my life? Because when you say I want to be a professional, my dream is to become a professional angler. Some of that's in your control. I mean, you can go buy a boat,
Right.
you can buy the equipment, you can enter tournaments, but there's a lot of things outside of your control. Versus if your dream is to say, how can I create more clarity in my life, or have a job that helps me increase the clarity in my life and what's important? Now you've got all these, you've basically widened the aperture of things that could help you do that.
Yeah.
Could be becoming a professional angler. It could also be, I'm going to go to a meditation retreat, or I'm going to go work for a company like Calm that, builds a meditation app and helps people do that. But it just starts, so when you started the dream, it just widens the amount of opportunities for you, versus saying, I'm going to be a professional angler, knowing that a lot of that is outside your control. And thus, are you a failure, or are you failing because you didn't achieve that goal, even though it wasn't, stuff was outside of your control?
Yeah. No, that makes sense. I knew that you would come back with the, are you really wanting to be a fisherman, or do you need that space in your head? And yes, I need the space in my head. Are you still on your dark chocolate deal? One dark
Oh,
chocolate a day?
I wish it were just one. Well, you know the whole story. I used to have to keep the chocolate in someone else's office because
Yeah.
I had zero self-control over chocolate. So I acknowledge that weakness, and I create friction to make sure that I don't eat all the chocolates. I will eat dark chocolate until my stomach hurts.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah, that and jelly
What is it
beans.
about the dark? You don't like milk chocolate? Is it because it's got better, it's healthier?
I've used that as a rationale for eating dark chocolate. Oh, it's a health food. No, I don't know. It may have been my mom's influence. She would love, I mean, like the darker the better. I mean,
Huh.
um,
Interesting.
so that was like all we kind of had as a kid.
Oh, wow. You grew up on dark chocolate? Oh,
Dude, I grew up on, my mom used to make her own yogurt,
wow.
plain, no flavor, just put some honey in it. She would grow her own sprouts. So as a kid, I would go to school with a sprout sandwich, like turkey and sprouts. And you talk about looks from
Really?
other kids. There was nobody wanting to trade my lunch.
They were like, "What is that? Your mom put
I'd have
beans
a
on your
sprout
sandwich."
sandwich, a hard-boiled egg, probably some yogurt my mom made.
Okay, so was your mom real competitive?
Yes, so
Yes.
she played sports growing up. I'd say my whole family. I mean, my dad swam in college. My
Mm.
older sister ran track at Auburn. My younger sister has always been super competitive, very into sports. She still mountain bikes and does crazy stuff like that. So yeah,
You didn't have a
yeah,
choice.
if you make some declaration, like the way I got into marathon running is one time at Thanksgiving dinner, I said, I think I'm going to run a marathon. And both my sisters were like, okay, we're going to hold you to that.
Oh, no. Yeah, you
Yeah.
didn't have much of a choice. You had to perform or they kicked you out of the family.
Well, the cool thing, my parents were very supportive. So like, I grew up playing baseball,
Mm.
and they just introduced me to opportunities. And soccer was not a big thing. I grew up in Alabama. Soccer was not a big thing until I was probably 6 or 7, and they started like the first soccer youth league, and I just fell in love with that sport. So I was like the only kid. Me and one other kid were the only two boys in my seventh grade class. That was the year you made the decision of, I'm going to play football or not,
Yeah.
and I was like one of two kids that didn't go out for the football team. But my mom was really smart, because I came home because all my buddies were playing. Yeah, we're gonna play football. I'm like, cool. And they
Right.
give you this little sheet, like, here's all the equipment you have to buy. And my mom was really smart, and then she said, she's like, well, if you want to play football, that's cool, but you're gonna have to buy the equipment. If you want to continue playing soccer, I'm happy to buy all that equipment. Oh,
Mm.
okay.
No, no brainer.
All right.
And that was back in the day, Michael, when and because you and I are not too dissimilar in age, there might be one, at least where I grew up, there was maybe one soccer field. It's not like it is now where you could spit and hit one out your door.
Oh
Like,
yeah. And it was usually the worst field.
oh yeah, it'd be run down. It'd be like kicking
It'd be
on just hard
rocks.
dirt.
Oh,
Yeah,
it was horrible.
yeah.
Yeah. Oh
Put them
yeah.
out. Put them out in the big parking lot at Biggs. They'll be fine.
I think as we discussed earlier, that the key to that sustainable high performance is consistency. It's approaching things with a growth mindset. So seeing challenges as not something to begrudge, but rather to see it as what can I learn from this? How can I overcome this? Because I know it's going to make me stronger. And I think it's then also just building those habits and routines that are going to support what's important for you. And that should start with identifying your dreams at a really high level. And then you can build the goals underneath that of like, okay, what are the steps, the things I need to do that's going to push me in the direction that's in alignment with my values. And you can start to build that action plan to say, what's the one thing I can do in the next 24 hours that's going to get me closer to that dream or that goal. What's the thing I can do in 48 hours, in a week, in 2 weeks, in a month, and you just start to build that action plan. And so don't try to swallow the whole elephant, just one bite at a time. As far as working with folks or folks that want to learn more about how a coach can support them, the best way to get a sense of what we're about is to go to our website, metaperformance.com. It's METTA performance.com. You can read about our approach. You can also read about the bios of our coaches. We are also on Instagram at meta.performance. That's the social channel we're the most active on. But you can reach us through there. You can also find me on LinkedIn.
You got a Substack too. It's a good name. What's the name of your Substack?
Heavy Metal Meta L. Yeah, and I'm trying to get better about it. I'm horrible about it. I'm great with coming up with ideas I want to write about. I start the editing process from the minute, and so that just freezes me up. Thankfully, I saw this great interview with Jason Isbell, who's one of my favorite singer-songwriters, and that he was asked about his approach to songwriting, and he said the key is just to write. He's like, writing and editing are two different steps, and so you just write. It's like whatever comes out, then you go to editing and you change it, because he was just talking about how many songs start out going in one direction, and then when he comes back to do the editing, he's like, they go in a totally different direction. But it's two steps:
That's
creating,
crazy.
editing. So I'm trying to get better about not worrying as much about. I also think about the great interview with Dave Grohl, where he was talking about how he struggled writing songs, and I forget who the other musician was, but he basically said, every song you write doesn't have to be Imagine. And he was like, oh, I get it. Like, you don't have to write the masterpiece every time.
Yeah.
Some songs, good enough is good enough.
That's one of the things that I took away is you as my leader. You and I battled all the time. And you're like, dude, just good enough. Don't overdo it. Don't and that's so funny. I remember that because I
Yep.
constantly would try to overdo it. And you're like, just don't let what was it? Don't let
Don't let
perfect be
great
the
be the
enemy of
enemy of
good.
good. Yep. It's so true. I mean, we get, we're as high achievers, and especially creatives, it's so easy just to blossom out. And yes, these are all great ideas, but you then have to say, okay, what's realistic? What can we get done? Because otherwise, you just don't make any progress. And I mean, that's true across athletics. That's true, in the corporate world. Is, again, not to stifle creativity, but and if it's helpful, just get that stuff on paper and then start to work backwards and say, okay. I mean, that's why we got into the whole MVP of uh, the really the smallest viable product that you can create, and then you just continue to build on that. So
Good stuff. My guest today has been Michael Seiler, co-founder of Metta Performance, METTA Performance. We appreciate you coming on the show today, Michael.
Thanks. This has been fun. It's always good catching up with you and talking about this, and really enjoyed the conversation.